storytelling, and not just the stories themselves, but the nuances in their delivery. And a sense of storytelling is something that I feel has been really important to my music making, to my composition. Having said that, I don't think I don't love a lot of program music, and I don't think programmatically about most of my music when I write, every now and then. But I love doing dramatic works where there's a really explicit story component, whether it's spoken or sung or carried through a video. And I also love using storytelling as an inspiration. I've done a lot of pieces that are related to my grandmother, who is born in Estonia in 1922 and has this sort of ridiculously amazing story of escape and of love and loss and all these sort of Hollywood, almost a Hollywood type story. And she was in Estonia during she survived both the Russian and then the German and then occupations of Estonia, and escaped when the Russians returned to Estonia, and she eventually made it to the United States. And she's always told us stories about that time. And growing up, for me, that sense that Estonia was somehow related to the person that I am, and the sense that that my grandmother's stories are part of my identity was really important to me.
I remember when I was waiting, he came and I was waiting, and then I saw how he came on a bicycle and how he came up. I remember today when he came. And then was the summer of 1940. That was 1 year before we got married. He came to visit me in that farm, and I was in remember today Alaska with my grandparents. It was the summer of 1940. 1940. I was 18 years old, and how he came up. Remember today when he came. And he came to visit me in that farm.
And then I saw how he came on scheme and came, and then I remember.
And I've tried to capture not just the stories, but my own way of the sort of sense one gets listening to stories like that, and the sense that I got of my grandmother, the kind of ambiguous relationship that she'd have to emotional expression. She would tell a story, and sometimes her voice was just completely calm, and you weren't sure if you didn't know Estonian, you wouldn't know if she was talking about something serious or not. And it's actually the same thing with Estonian folk songs. There'll be a folk song, kui mina alles Norvel olin, lapsepõlves mängisin, something like that. And it'll be the same thing if they're talking about cabbage and potatoes, or their childhood in the case of the song, or their daughter or son dying in a war. And so often with my grandmother's stories, that this would happen, that she would her voice would just lilt along in this very gentle way. And then and every now and then, sort of, you'd see the emotion coming forth, and that was incredibly moving.
It was like a lightning, like somebody had hit on a flag, and then we all drove quiet. It was a June night. The moon was lighting the road, but the hearts were heavy, and we drove home, went to the farm, but the farm was far away from the highway, up on the hill. Next morning, we were all standing there on the fence under the big linden trees, watching how the Russian army marched along that highway toward Tartu, toward our city. And this moment we shared together, you know, seemed that all the dreams were broken. All the dreams were broken.
I sometimes regret not having had to deal with very strong points of view. And I have a couple teachers, Davidowski, who I just had the one lesson with, had a very strong point of view, and Bright Cheng had a very strong point of view, and that was actually nice to be able to react to that and sort of find yourself in relationship to a very strong point of view. Or you know, I haven't had that many teachers who say, here's the repertoire that you have to know. You know, you have to know these 5 pieces. So I think it puts more. It's maybe been a slower process for me to, and I started late as a composer. You know, I didn't really compose much in undergrad, but it's been a somewhat slower process for me to really figure out the things that I like in music, the things that really figure out the way of expressing myself in music that feels really the most honest, and that's sort of an ongoing process. And I think I've realized over time how much that's something that doesn't just happen to you. You have to sort of think about it, and you have to sit down, as you know, after you've written a piece or when you're starting a new piece, and let your mind run wild, and then sort of start narrowing down and listen very closely to lots of music, and start thinking about, okay, what does it mean if I create a piece that has this sort of shape? What, you know, how does that leave the audience? Is that what I need to be worrying about? What are my priorities, basically? And that's sort of an ongoing process, and an exciting one, I think. I've always been drawn to various types of folk music, but I haven't, I don't use a lot of, especially recently, I haven't used a lot of specific folk music in my own compositions, and I feel sometimes slightly odd if it's not a tradition I know very well, or if it's a tradition I don't, you know, if I don't feel like I can be honest with it, then I don't do it. But there's always a lingering sense of the things I happen to like are often related to folk music. I like high clarinet and sort of octatonic scales every now and then, which always end up sounding slightly gypsyish, and I like umpa rhythms, and so I've sometimes gotten some strange reactions to my music, where people tell me how much it speaks to them on a Jewish level, and I'm glad. It's great. It's certainly not intended, but it's, you know, there's some sort of connection there, in that there's music that I love, and it's the things that I love in music. I don't want to keep those from entering my own music.